New clear video shows a suspect wielding a large gun in last month's Inner Harbor shooting that prompted the return of the curfew.
It's pretty horrible.
Neighbors speak out on the relentless violence facing Baltimore.
Do more. That's all you can say. Do more.
The first weekend of the mayor's youth curfew in the books. We press him on how many kids were taken to centers and if any refused. A chaotic scene outside a store in Fells Point. The frustration over safety as business owners sound off.
It's embarrassment.
An 18-year-old arrested in a Catonsville triple shooting that left one dead. His shocking confession to police as he was taken into custody.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
And good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubawa.
I'm Kai Jackson. Fox 45 News is demanding answers as we're getting a look at two concerning videos.
Surveillance video shows the suspect accused of shooting two teenagers at the Inner Harbor last month carrying a large gun. This is the incident that led Mayor Scott to reinstate enforcement of the city's youth curfew.
Plus, chaos in Fells Point. A fight in the neighborhood over the holiday weekend leaves business owners frustrated and afraid.
Jeff Abel will join us with a closer look at the concerns in Fells Point in just a few moments.
Our live team coverage starts with Rebecca Pryor and the latest on the Inner Harbor shooting.
Yeah, well, 2 arrests were already made in this case. Police have since determined that neither had any direct involvement in the shooting. They're now releasing this new surveillance video and asking for the community's help identifying 2 new suspects.
It's crazy.
It's shocking. It's pretty horrible.
One of Baltimore City's key tourist destinations turned into a tragic crime scene last month.
Definitely affecting the tourist crowd and people that live downtown.
Area residents reacting to newly released video.
Detectives with the Baltimore Police Department
Of the Inner Harbor shooting that left 2 teens injured over spring break.
I don't come here at night. Let's just say that.
They're obviously children, a bunch of children.
The incident sparked by an unruly crowd of about 200 young people. Massive crowds captured on surveillance video as the main suspect, seen here, pulls out a long gun and starts spraying bullets. The same suspect also caught close up on police body cam footage, along with another suspect seen interacting with the alleged gunman moments before shots rang out.
Anyone who knows that person would be able to recognize them by the picture.
Former Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson says the clear image of the main suspect's face gives him hope for an arrest. However, the brazen nature of the crime itself
it's hard to believe that someone would just shoot someone in a crowd like that.
Is anything but hopeful.
Young people today just aren't afraid to commit an act of violence right there in front of a whole bunch of witnesses.
And feet from police.
And it brought significant enough attention that it led to a policy shift.
We are going back to the old days.
The shooting ultimately triggering Mayor Scott to reinstate the city's youth curfew.
We'll see how that plays out.
But whether or not a curfew, largely enforced by social workers, will be enough to curb the surge in young people causing and falling victim to violent crime this year,
It's maybe too little too late.
has yet to be seen.
A larger message needs to be sent to people out there to keep this under control.
Do more. That's all you can say. Do more.
And anyone with any information on the suspects seen in these new videos are asked to call Metro Crime Stoppers. You can also find a full clip to that video located in this story on our website at foxbaltimore.com. Reporting live from the Inner Harbor, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. As we mentioned, that Inner Harbor shooting is what prompted Mayor Scott to enforce the city's curfew that started this past weekend.
It becomes a waste of resources if the city doesn't get the kids into the places.
Well, coming up at 10:30, Fox 45 News presses Mayor Scott about the first weekend of enforcement.
In Fells Point, businesses are frustrated after a fight this past weekend. It is the second time this spring and the latest example of chaos in the tourist destination. Fox 45's Jeff Abel talked with some of those business owners tonight and tells us what happened. Jeff?
Well, throughout this city, it was a quiet holiday night last night until the stroke of midnight, when here on the streets of Fells Point, all that changed. In Fells Point, business owners spent the morning cleaning up after a rowdy holiday night. Throughout the streets, there were empty liquor bottles, empty liquor bags, and patches of hair lost in a fight. This was the scene on Thames Street when just after midnight, anger erupted in a crowd of people.
It just escalated into a really bad fight.
Now someone picks up a chair
and she threw out the older one, and they started fighting like crazy.
This man says he watched the fight from a distance.
I've seen a lot of young people.
It was 30 to 50 people out here, all young people.
Business owners asked not to be identified, but say the same crowd of young people are responsible for 2 other early morning fights in the area, one here on Broadway, another here on Bond. It's unclear if any of those involved were underage and breaking curfew. Police made no arrest.
It was bad.
In Fells Point, those who watched this early morning fight are concerned alcohol consumption in the street was a factor in the brawl after last call.
They had tequila bottles with straws. They had a lot of miniatures, a lot of bottles of liquor.
Well, business owners here are blaming much of the problem on illegal sales of alcohol to underagers who bring it into Fells Point and start their own party. We're live in Fells Point tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. Fells Point does have a history of starting the summer months with violence. Just last week, we heard from a store owner who says they were forced to close early because of an unruly crowd. Last year, Fells Point bouncer Marco Nunez was shot and killed outside a bar after his shift last April. His friends say a fight led to that shooting. Then this time last year, a fight broke out inside a convenience store while looters moved in to steal food and other items. Nearby video caught a man dousing himself with milk, the crowd leaving the community trashed. And 2 years ago, summer of 2021, Fells Point saw a shooting, fights, and several rowdy crowds, including people standing on police cars. Well, we want you to join the conversation. From what you saw this weekend, do you believe the city's summer crime plan is working? So far, 92% of those who voted say no. You can vote right now at foxbaltimore.com.
City council members held their first day of budget hearings today. The council will hear from several city agencies, including the Department of Public Works, the Police Department, and the state's attorney's office, and the mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, also known as MONSE. As Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost explains, Councilman Eric Costello has questions for those public safety agencies, especially MONSE.
Councilman Eric Costello, chair of these budget hearings, is making it clear he wants specific information from an agency he says is exponentially growing and wants details on how MONSE is spending your tax dollars. Ahead of another round of budget hearings, Councilman Eric Costello sending this letter to Shante Jackson, the director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, making a list of demands before more money is allocated. He wants status on the city's group violence reduction strategy, internal grant application and awardee process, job description and vacancies, and how the agency is spending $50 million in American Rescue Plan funding.
The role that MONSE plays is critically important. We want to make sure that those taxpayer dollars are being spent the most effective way possible.
The crux of his concern, how groups were selected to get the money. Fox 45 News investigating the city's ARPA allocation process, finding dozens of emails shielding the council from some information about that process, something Costello says he wants to get clear answers about.
Also, there's been some questions around the folks who have been awarded grants from MONSE, so better understanding, the criteria that's used to select those awardees, what performance metrics are in place, etc.
We've been asking some of these questions and haven't been able to get anything. Hopefully you will.
Our expectation is to get a written response, just as we did from the public safety letters we sent out last year.
As one of the city's public safety groups, MONSE oversees the community violence intervention ecosystem, and leading that charge is Shante Jackson, who's about to leave City Hall.
Would like to hear about the administration's efforts to find a replacement for that role as well, because it's a critically important role in the crime fighting strategy in Baltimore City.
MONSE ignoring questions about where Jackson is going or why she's choosing to leave. Last week, we tried to get some clarity. I know that you announced your resignation, you're planning to leave. Can you say where you plan to go?
Let me stop right here.
Okay.
Never, ever will I prioritize any news about me over top of news about our young people.
That's why I didn't ask during the press conference.
So we can save that question for a time when I'm ready to share it. Thank you.
Without much success. And then Costello has concerns about the staff within MONSE itself. He says the office has grown to about 30 people, including a raise for Jackson in November of 2022, topping out her salary at more than $220,000 $100,000 a year.
So really getting an understanding of what it is that those folks are doing, specifically job descriptions.
More questions Fox 45 News has spent years trying to get clarity about, specifically when it comes to the role of Safe Streets workers and the funding going to the Community Violence Intervention Group.
Is the budget for Monzi at risk if this information isn't provided to you by the end of the week?
Look, I would say that at this point, it's entirely too early to say, whether or not the council is going to use its new authority to move money around.
Monzi ignoring questions Tuesday from Fox 45, asking if the information requested by Costello would be provided by Friday.
Monzi's budget hearing is scheduled to take place next Monday night inside the council chambers. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Budget hearings today included the fire department and the office in charge of allotting ARPA dollars. During the fire department hearing, it was revealed frontline workers didn't receive any American Rescue Plan dollars. Now, that was just one of the issues with ARPA that came up during today's hearing. Now, earlier in the day, Visit Baltimore, let's change to the next one, told the council that they didn't receive any ARPA funds either. An hour after that, though, the ARPA office told the council they allocated more than $2 million to Visit Baltimore. Councilman Yuchi Schleifer pressed city leaders on how exactly ARPA dollars are being spent, but so far they have not given a straight answer about that.
Here are these projects. I want to know, does this include everything? Is there anything beyond this that gets us to the $641 million? Because from my calculation, there's $161 million. What has happened in April and May that has gotten us to the full $641 million?
So we will get you a full accounting of the $641 million, and we will do our best attempt to tie it back to the timeline of when the announcements were made or the funding was allocated. Is that possible, team?
Well, DPW had its budget, will have its budget hearing tomorrow. We'll have complete coverage of that hearing on air and online.
Got a chilly night on the way as we head into the overnight hours after high temperatures in the mid to upper 70s. Today we're at 67 at BWI. Not bad. It's pretty comfortable as we're wrapping up the O's game. 59 now at Easton, though. 66 at Westminster. But get a load of this. 51 overnight here in Baltimore. Will be in the 40s. Westminster, Columbia, Bel Air. Temperatures in the 40s and 50s along the eastern shore, and that goes for west of the city as well. I'm going to let you know if you're going to be able to put away the jackets by tomorrow afternoon. That's coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Next on Fox 45 News at 10, an arrest in the Catonsville hotel shooting and murder. The shocking confession, according to police, what he said he couldn't stop doing. Feds and local police tracked down the 15-year-old known as Baby K, ending a manhunt for the juvenile accused of trying to kill a student on a school bus and then murder. How it all ended. And at 10:30, one weekend into the city's youth engagement plan, which includes curfew enforcement. Ahead, the number of violators transported and questions still unanswered.
New tonight, we have an update on a shocking case out of Prince George's County. Police say and U.S. Marshals arrest a 15-year-old known as Baby K in connection to an attempted murder on a school bus earlier this month and a D.C. homicide days later. Well, police say Baby K and two others boarded a bus while it was stopped, then tried to shoot a boy, but police say that gun malfunctioned. The others were previously arrested in the case. Police also believe Baby K murdered the sister of one of his accomplices in 2 days after the attack. Now, officers are expected to address this arrest tomorrow. All involved are juveniles but have been charged as adults.
Well, the 17-year-old shot by a police officer earlier this month is now facing multiple criminal charges, including for the gun recovered and assault. On May 16th, BPD released video showing the teen running from police and pulling out a gun before being shot as he rounded a corner running from officers. Police say the gun had been stolen and had an extended magazine. The teen is charged as an adult. The officer's actions remain under review. We'll continue to follow this story as it develops.
A recent survey from Wallet Hub shows Baltimore is ranked among the worst places to raise a family. That survey evaluated 182 cities. Baltimore ranked 175 because of poor scores in health and safety, education, and family activities. On Fox 45 News at 4 o'clock, we spoke with economist Anirban Basu, who says high property taxes is keeping families away.
Baltimore City has very high property taxes, and so it's a pretty bad value proposition. It's one of the most dangerous cities in the country, has one of the most challenging school systems in the country, and at the same time, very high tax rates. And so, no surprise, we don't rank very high in terms of being a place in which to raise a family.
Given the rise in juvenile crime, we asked our viewers a few weeks ago if you believe Baltimore City is a safe place to raise a child. The results mirrored that of the Wallet Hub survey. 90% of voters said no.
Well, grocery store chain Giant Food of Maryland is taking steps to keep its stores open despite a wave of theft and violence. That's according to a report from the Washington Post. The report says the business plans on limiting the number of entrances to its stores, hiring security guards, keeping fewer high-cost items on store shelves, and limiting the number of items allowed to be taken through self-checkout. The chain says it hasn't had to close any stores yet. Well, tonight, the Randallstown chapter of the NAACP is demanding action after a triple shooting turned homicide at a Baltimore County motel on Memorial Day. Fox 45's Amy Simpson has the story.
This motel sits right at the intersection of Route 40 and I-695, and the local chapter of the NAACP is now calling it a magnet for criminal behavior. Tonight, new accusations that this motel in western Baltimore County is a hotbed for crime. The Randallstown chapter of the NAACP is calling out Motel 6 in Catonsville, saying it attracts drug activity, drug and human trafficking, and prostitution.
Once our officers got there, they located 3 people that were suffering from apparent gunshot wounds.
These bold words from the NAACP come after a murder at the motel around 3 a.m. Monday. The triple shooting leaving 1 person dead and 2 others injured.
Our officers and detectives worked quickly to locate and arrest a suspect.
Today, police identifying that murder suspect as 18-year-old Jose Diaz Contreras of Indianapolis. Charging documents reveal a 30-year-old man was killed, a 19-year-old and 25-year-old injured, though no explanation for why the 18-year-old was in town from Indiana or what the men were arguing over. Court filings also reveal the suspect admitted to pulling the trigger at the scene, telling police he could not stop shooting. The whole thing even caught on motel surveillance. Tonight, the Randallstown NAACP is calling for ownership of this Catonsville Motel 6 to address its crime problem, demanding an agreement with Baltimore County for the motel to donate money towards crime reduction, implement armed security guards, conduct guest background checks, and ban nighttime visitors. We can no longer allow hotels to make money and become crime magnets in our communities, the NAACP said in a statement, also pointing to hotels in Woodlawn and Pikesville to clean up their acts. Attempts to speak with owners of this motel today were unsuccessful so far. They've yet to comment on the murder that happened here early yesterday morning. In Catonsville, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Well, Baltimore County Police responded late today to the NAACP concerns about hotels in that area, citing complications of invoking a local nuisance act. The police saying the department is currently reviewing calls for service and working to determine what steps may be appropriate to improve safety and security at this location and in the general area.
Well, the first weekend of Baltimore City's youth curfew enforcement is in the books. Fox 45 News presses Mayor Brandon Scott about how things went.
I'm Autrell Nashar in Washington. And coming up, how another company is having to navigate threats of a boycott over Pride Month merchandise while facing calls to stick to their principles.
And as we work through the overnight hours, a bit of a chill setting up for tomorrow morning's commute. Things will be different by tomorrow afternoon, though. Take a look at the planner hour by hour, starting off in the 40s and 50s and ending at about 75 to 80. So what you need for tomorrow, the last day of May? Shorts and short sleeves by afternoon, but in the morning you might need a light jacket or a sweater, and both times you're going to need those sunglasses. A lot of sun coming our way. I'm going to let you know when the next chance of rain could be in the forecast. That's in my Weather Authority forecast coming up.
Heading into the start of Pride Month, more companies are in the spotlight for how they respond to threats of boycotts and targeted violence for selling Pride-themed merchandise.
National correspondent Autrell Nashar has the latest from Washington.
Culture wars coming to a store near you. Kohl's, the latest company to face threats of a boycott from conservative activists and media voices. The catalyst? This onesie with a person holding the Progress Pride flag. Critics say the retailer is targeting kids, calling it inappropriate. As of airtime, Kohl's did not respond to our request for comment. Kohl's has been participating in Pride Month for years. So has Target for more than a decade, which the company pointed out when announcing it's pulling some of its Pride items after receiving threats.
And they've told all the employees to go.
Authorities investigating bomb threats at Target stores in Utah, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Target getting additional backlash from those who say they compromise their values.
We now, in the southern stores, have to walk all the way to the back. This is where Pride stuff is.
This is not ally behavior.
It's hard to quantify the impact of this backlash. Retail stocks have already been struggling over the past year as consumers shift spending away from goods and towards services. Critics point to a recent drop in Target stock, but around the same time, the company released a disappointing earnings report coming off an already slow year. Levi's and North Face have also faced conservative criticism for their pride campaigns or inclusive marketing. Bud Light garnering the most attention for recalibrating its marketing after a recent boycott and drop in sales.
I don't believe that companies are going to completely go away from that. They might have to be a little more careful about how it's represented in this new political environment that we're seeing.
In recent years, boycotts have had tangible short-term effects, but companies have weathered the storm.
Pick a company and we can find inclusive messaging that they've given in the past. There's only, so many things that you can get enraged about until there's no restaurants left to eat at, no food left to eat, or, places to go.
The jury's still out on the impact of the outrage. In Washington, I'm Atrell Nashar reporting.
And that brings us to our national question of the day. Do you think companies should take a stance on current political issues? So far, 90% of voters say no. You can head to foxbaltimore.com/vote and click on the polls tab to weigh in.
Well, a New Hampshire school district is using COVID relief funds to pay for an upcoming high school pride event that includes a drag performance. Some are criticizing the federal money going towards efforts outside of the classroom.
So there is an acute need to use this money to help students master reading, writing, arithmetic, science, history, civics, all of those core subjects.
Well, the district told Sinclair Broadcast Group the city approved the use of the funds.
The holiday weekend was violent in some parts of the city and around the country. We'll take a closer look at the violence that has communities on edge.
And now that a debt deal has been reached, the president and House Speaker are working to sell it to Congress. Why it could be a difficult road ahead.
And in Sports Unlimited, the heart and soul of the Orioles on the injured list. A former Yankees takes his place. Now, how the team fared. We're following three big stories at 10:30.
A deal to raise the debt ceiling. Now the challenge is selling it to lawmakers. What to expect as the deadline gets closer.
Baltimore City saw a violent Memorial Day weekend, and it's not alone. We'll take a look at the violence that rocked many communities over the past few days.
A curfew now in effect for young people throughout the summer in Baltimore City. It is part of a $1 million plan from the mayor to keep kids away from violence.
Tonight, we're looking into how effective the first weekend of the curfew enforcement really was.
Fox 45's Maxine Stryker pressing the mayor for some answers.
When the clock struck 9 p.m. Friday, the city's youth curfew began.
I want this to work, but I still see these young people not obeying.
But the concern was the kids wouldn't be on board. When asked if they'd like to be transported to a youth engagement center where the city would supply food, games, and attempt to locate their parents, they can refuse to go.
It's unbelievably poorly thought out.
The centers are here at a recreation center in Park Heights and here at a church community center in East Baltimore. We stopped by the Rita Church Community Center Friday night and all was quiet. We spotted no kids going in. The center was fully staffed and ready. Faith Leach, the city's chief administrative officer, sharing this picture on Twitter of the staff. However, the mayor's office told us on Friday night no children were transported to the Youth Connection centers, touting the first night as a success.
We didn't have any major incidents with our young people. We know people got the message, and we're going to continue to work each and every day around curfew as we've had in Baltimore for the last 30-something odd years.
But what about the rest of the weekend? We asked the mayor's office how many kids were taken to the Youth Connection centers, how many kids refused to go to the centers, and how many kids were engaged with total. We did not receive a response by our deadline. According to the mayor's office, the summer youth engagement strategy as a whole has a budgeted price tag of $1,892,000.
I think the program has good things on the merits. Problem is getting the kids participate in these activities.
But political analyst John Deedy worries what happens if the kids aren't actually engaging.
It becomes a waste of resources if the city doesn't get the kids into the places.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Well, the mayor's office responded to our questions in a statement just after 7 o'clock tonight. It says Baltimore's first weekend under the curfew ordinance was a success. There were no major incidents and no need to transport anybody to Youth Connection centers. The statement goes on to say that they will continue to evaluate our approach and adapt if necessary as the summer progresses.
Former Baltimore Mayor Sheila Dixon is weighing in on the curfew. She says she thinks that it could be a good place to start, but she's not sure how sustainable it will be after school lets out in a couple of weeks.
I think that overall, constantly sending the message out to guardians, parents, etc., about what's going to be tolerated and what's not going to be tolerated is important. And I think that's got to be consistent. I guess for me, the issue is, can this sustain itself? This school's not out yet. Let's see what happens, over the summer. I think one thing is extending the youth works right when kids get out of school to the very end of the summer could definitely be a great incentive. I also think that the state has to be involved. Department of Juvenile Justice Services has to be involved in this process.
Well, Mayor Brandon Scott is announcing a new program to keep kids safe after school known as the Safe Passage Initiative with just 2 weeks left in the school year. The mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement and Office of Children of Family Success partnering with the city school system and MTA police to monitor places with heavy student traffic after school to keep the peace among students and offer resources. Mondawmin and the State Center will be the first safe passage priority areas. The program will expand next school year. It's not clear how much the program, though, will cost.
2 people are violently attacked outside of a Baltimore Planned Parenthood center on North Howard Street. And a warning, the pictures you're about to see are disturbing. According to city police, 2 men ages 73 and 80 were attacked protesting at the Planned Parenthood office. A GoFundMe page identifies the 73-year-old as Mark Crosby. Police say the suspect punched him, then kicked him in the face while he was on the ground. Anyone with information is asked to call city police.
Developing tonight, Baltimore City Police investigating two shootings on opposite ends of the city, less than 20 minutes apart, with few leads so far. Just before 5:40 this evening, police were called to the intersection of Brems Lane and Shannon Drive in northeast Baltimore near Herring's Run. They found a man had been shot multiple times. He was rushed to the hospital where he is now being treated.
60 minutes earlier, a 20-year-old was shot along West North Avenue across the street from the Enoch Pratt Library, Pennsylvania Avenue branch. Well, the status of both wounded men was not given at the time.
Baltimore City saw a violent holiday weekend. 5 people shot in 3 days. One of those victims died. And Baltimore, not the only place seeing a violent kickoff to the summer. There were shootings and chaotic crowds all over the nation. As national correspondent Kayla Gaskins reports, many of the crimes shared a common thread.
Crowds of young people causing chaos this holiday weekend.
Oh my God, so many people got shot. Oh my God.
In Hollywood, Florida, 9 people shot. The violence reportedly started with several young men fighting. Then one pulled out a gun.
It was a scary scene to roll into, and I don't care how desensitized you are by media and TV, to really see it firsthand. Everyone was mortified.
Police in Massachusetts detaining several juveniles in connection to a shooting near Revere Beach. Police say shots were fired into a group of young people during a fight. In San Clemente, California, off-duty Marines attacked by nearly 40 teens. This on a weekend meant to honor those who give their lives for our country. Last week, a festival outside Chicago canceled for safety concerns following a chaotic flash mob involving hundreds of teenagers. Data shows this type of youth violence started trending upwards in 2020 when homicides committed by multiple juveniles rose 66% compared with the year before. In the post-COVID world, we are definitely seeing more of this. Whether it's being driven by whatever happened to young people during COVID or not is really not for me to say, but a long period of time being out of school, out of a structured environment, and you just have to wonder what impact that had on young people. Law enforcement experts pointing out police shortages and the reduction of penalties for juveniles who commit crimes likely also contributes to the increasing frequency of youth mob violence. And summer is just beginning. As the school year ends, law enforcement agencies are bracing for what the coming months may bring. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
5 people are still missing in Iowa, including those whose remains are thought to be underneath the rubble of a partially collapsed apartment building. The city and demolition crews are set to begin as early as today, but are now reevaluating that plan after a rescue last night. Protests erupted after a woman was found on the 4th floor more than 24 hours after the building collapsed. The rescue happened after officials thought no one else was inside. The building is unstable and continues to get worse. Officials getting emotional, thinking about the decisions they have to make going forward as people at the news conference lost patience.
You can't run up to a pile of bricks and rocks.
They're problems together. Try and survive.
And just start throwing things off as much as we want to.
Well, the city had concerns about the building after bricks started to fall, but recently the owner submitted 2 independent reports certifying the building was structurally sound.
On the road to getting a spending bill passed, the first stop was the House Rules Committee. Now, if the legislation is passed, it's going to be blocked. This is where it could happen. National correspondent Christine Frizzell brings us up to speed.
Well, I'm glad the speaker's here today. Despite the stops and starts, negotiations between President Joe Biden and Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy were only Chapter 1. Selling the bill to the disparate edges of each party is the latest challenge.
Not one Republican should vote for this deal. It is a bad deal.
This is about folks like the hard right of the Republican Party coming after a chunk of funding from the IRS so they can let their billionaire buddies off the hook who are cheating on taxes.
For the White House, which initially insisted there would be no negotiations on raising the debt limit, reaching a deal was the cost of doing business in Washington.
It's the nature of governing that you have to compromise, and we think that we struck a fair compromise here.
That compromise, named the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, puts a freeze on most non-military spending for 2 years.